But let's go across to Shireen Van, who is in conversation with Elon Bremmer, president and founder at Eurasia Group at the World Economic Forum in Davos, to get us some exciting insights there. Shireen, over to you.
Welcome back. You're watching our continuing coverage here from Davos 2025. I'm Shireen Van. The big story here is President Trump. This is a Trump Davos, so to speak. In a couple of hours from now, President Trump and the inauguration ceremony will kick off in the U.S. and all eyes on what he's likely to do on day one in office. Joining me now is a man who understands politics as well as the implications of what a Trump 2.0 era could possibly mean for the world. Elon Bremmer, it's great to have you back on CNBC-TV18. Thanks very much for joining us. As I said, it's all about Trump this time around, isn't it?
It is, and there are lots of reasons for that. One is because he's in a much stronger position in the United States than he was in 2017. This was a bigger win for him. He got the popular vote. He has legitimacy. The Democrats were saying he didn't deserve to win. It was the Russians in 2017. Yeah. This time around, they recognized, nope, he just won. And he won even after all of the impeachments, even after all of the cases. So, I mean, people wanted this. This is what they wanted. And furthermore, around Trump, you have all of these loyalists. There's nobody like Mike Pence. There's nobody like Jim Mattis or Mike Pompeo. Trump doesn't feel he needs the imprimatur of establishment Republicans, and he did in his first term. So this is an administration where what Trump wants, he's going to get. And that means other leaders that don't like it don't have other people they can work with to engage with and say, well, can't we find another way? No, no, no. You're right. It's the Trump Davos because it's so much more about him as opposed to about the election, the administration, and how the world is changing.
So a stronger Trump, what does that mean as far as economics are concerned? I mean, through the case of his campaign, we've heard him talk about what he intends to do as far as tariffs are concerned. How's that going to play out, whether it's 10, 20 or 60%? But from an economic standpoint, a stronger Trump, what is it going to mean? Well,
of course, it comes at a time that the U.S. has a strong economy as well. Coming out of the pandemic, the Americans are outperforming the entire G7 by a long margin. So that means other countries are really concerned about getting into a fight with Trump, about having him focus on them. Interest rates are, of course, higher now than they were. So there's not as much fiscal space for a lot of these countries to do what they want. Indebtedness is a problem. And China today is running a $1 trillion surplus with the rest of the world. It's the only part of their economy that's working. So, in other words, this is a much better time for Trump to be walking around saying, I'm going to hit you in the face if you don't do what I want. So he's going to get a lot of wins. I mean, like the first win he got was...
How confrontational do you expect him to be? I mean, from Canada to Greenland to China, I mean, everything's on the table at this point in time. How confrontational do you expect him to be?
I think the opening salvos are meant to shock. It's meant to say this is the law of the jungle, what I call a G0 world, where he's the apex predator. And, that's not a bad place to be. If you're the United States and if you're Trump, you're going to get a lot of wins that way. So, yeah, I expect that plenty of countries are going to do what Mark Zuckerberg did. Change his business model, change the people around him, and say, sir, yeah, we can work with you, we can work with Elon. I think that's exactly what we're going to see from a lot of American allies. And we might see it from adversaries, too. We already saw a ceasefire in Gaza. I don't believe that ceasefire happens if Kamala Harris is president. So, yes, Biden set it up. He did the grunt work, the groundwork over the past few months, but Trump is the one that came in and was prepared to hit the Israelis and the Palestinians harder and was credible in doing so, that forced a deal that otherwise wouldn't have gotten done. I think you're going to see that on the economic side with countries all over the world.
Let's talk about the U.S. and China. We had that call between President Trump and Xi Jinping. What did you make of that?
I guess it was kind of like two boxers coming out at the beginning of the match and touching gloves. I don't think it shows that they're buddies. I think they're getting ready for a fight. Let's keep in mind that the Secretary of Treasury, the Secretary of Commerce, they're not going to be in their positions until the end of February at the earliest, given confirmation hearings. So right now, the people that have the ear of Trump and the policy-making capacity are in the White House. And those are much more hawkish on tariffs. So I actually expect that in the first weeks, maybe even the first days, maybe we'll see it at Davos, there will be an announcement of initial additional tariffs against China. I think this is going to be a tough environment for the Chinese to navigate. Yes, there'll be a summit meeting. I'm sure it'll be announced at some point in the coming months. And TikTok, Trump has said he's, willing to try to find a way to make TikTok available.
One of the first decisions he says that he's going to take when he comes into office. But what do you make of that? You've got a Supreme Court ruling that upholds the ban. You've got Elon Musk saying that, look, there should be reciprocity. If you keep TikTok alive in the U.S., then, big tech should be allowed to operate in China as well. Do you think that Trump can get away with keeping TikTok alive in the U.S.?
Well, to be fair, what Elon said was, yes, I agree with the president. I would want to keep TikTok too. But there is this reciprocity issue. My view is absent reciprocity, TikTok should be banned. That's a different position than Elon's, though it's close. Look, Trump has received a fair amount of campaign support from TikTok investors, Jeff Yass in particular, seven-figure numbers. Once he got that money, he flipped his position. And one thing that has been fairly reliably constant for Trump is that if you give him money, he is willing to provide you political response. And TikTok is a place that originally he was the guy that said we think we should ban TikTok. And now he doesn't. So he can change his mind, and he's more likely to change his mind if you pay him, right? And that's true whether you're, the Mexicans looking for a trade deal or whether you're, TikTok trying to stay alive. But this is the law of the land passed by Congress and upheld by a 9-0 Supreme Court ruling. And so Trump can say, I'd like there to be a 50-50 deal, but that's not the way the law works. And we've already heard that from Tom Cotton, Republican senator. We've heard that from Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House. I'm not sure that what Trump says is what's going to move the needle here. And I think the Chinese are waiting. The Chinese aren't going to make a decision on this until they see what the deal is. There were these rumors that, they're talking to Elon about, maybe letting him buy it. No, they're not. They are waiting to see what the deal is. And if they're going to give anything to the Americans, it's going to be in connection to, more leverage on the overall relationship. Because TikTok's actually not that important for China. It's part of the digital economy. It's not primarily a surveillance mechanism. It's not primarily a propaganda delivery mechanism. It's part of the digital economy in China that is not considered strategically all that important. So I don't see Xi Jinping making a decision on TikTok by itself. Not at all.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting take there as far as how TikTok could perhaps be leveraged by the Chinese as well. But, we're talking about Elon Musk. Let's talk about Vivek Ramaswamy, because reports seem to suggest that he's out of the Efficiency Commission already, or on his way out of the Efficiency Commission already. Are you surprised by that?
Well, I mean, it shows that they're efficient, right? They had two co-heads. Now they only have one. That's 50% efficiency gains, just like that. Haven't even started it. I'm a little surprised. I mean, of course, last time around, there were people that were in and out of the Trump administration, on every week, every month. You remember someone we'll see here, Scaramucci, who was, I believe, for 11 days, the communications spokesperson. So, still, Vivek hasn't quite impressed me to that degree. But look, he did clearly antagonize a lot of people in MAGA, when he came out and made posts that seemed to be anti-patriotic about how Americans need H-1Bs and American culture isn't very good. I think that landed very badly. I also think he had a lot of personal problems with some of the staff around the White House that didn't like him and were talking badly. And at the end of the day, Vivek is not all that important to Trump. So it wasn't hard. I assume he's going to announce his candidacy for governorship in Ohio in short order.
So where does that leave Elon Musk in the Trump era?
He's the most powerful man in the United States after Trump. And I think that he's the biggest surprise in terms of the geopolitical order. He's probably the most powerful man in the U.S. military, industrial, technological complex. And that's the most powerful institution in the world. So what Elon says when he attacks the Canadian government or the British government or the German government, which is being done in full view and knowledge and coordination with President Trump. I think that's a really significant challenge for other countries because, you know, they may have conversations, oh, we'd like to ban X, but, you know, if you do that, you're actually endangering your entire relationship with the United States. And I worry about that. You know, if we were talking about India, if Narendra Modi were having a meeting with the head of state and brought in Gautam Adani, we would call India a kleptocracy. We would say that's an aberration of the rule of law. We would not find that acceptable. But the reality is, in a G0 world, not a G7, not a G20, but a G0 world, which is the world that we are in right now, the United States, when they break an international norm and do something themselves, that's the new norm, at least for America, and you're going to have to find a way to deal with it. So the idea that rule of law is somehow something that is collectively ascribed and agreed to is going to face conflict with rule of law as whatever Trump and Elon say it is. I think that's a big problem.
Well, you know, speaking of rule of laws and multilateral forums and multilateral institutions, here at the World Economic Forum, Trump is going to be speaking to the WEF for the third time as a sitting U.S. president. And the overarching theme here is collaboration in an intelligence age. I mean, you know, we're talking about confrontation and conflict. Is there any hope for collaboration on anything of any significance?
Yeah, collaboration not so clear. Intelligence becoming more challenging. Age, there's a lot of age among all the men that are running these countries these days, so I think we've got that piece of it. Look, I mean, my friend Borga Brenda wrote in the New York Times today that we're seeing the end of the post-Cold War era.
That's right.
I firmly agree with that. Right now, today, is the end of the post-Cold War era. It is a new era. It is a G0 era. It is a geopolitical recession. We are in a bust cycle where the strong do what they will and the poor suffer what they must. And it's not a world where we can rely on those in power, whether they are governments or individual leaders or corporations, to take care of the people that they have power over. Now, when you talk about, you know, sort of cooperation in an intelligence age, that's what you need. You need the people with power to have some level of accountability for those that aren't in power. And that's what's breaking right now. We're all on defense, playing geopolitical defense. We're in damage control mode. We're trying to maintain some level of capacity because, you know, right now, this is not a time that you say, oh, well, you know, who's going to empower these underprivileged people? No, no, no. All of the momentum is in the other direction.
Well, you know, what are some of the big risks that you foresee as we look at 2025 in a G0 environment that we continue to live in? And let's talk about some of the breakthroughs that we've seen. We talked about Israel and Gaza. Do you believe that that's going to be a fragile peace, or do you expect the Middle East to stabilize?
I don't think there's that much more that Israel can target of Hamas. I mean, they've hit all the weapons caches. They've taken out all the tunnels. They've taken out all of the, you know, operational capability. But, of course, the reality is that as long as there are Palestinians in Gaza living the way they are, Hamas is going to have an easy time recruiting. So if Hamas is an army, they're a lot weaker. If Hamas is an idea, they're much stronger. But Israel can't defeat an idea. So I do think that this 42-day agreement, a ceasefire, would not have occurred if Kamala Harris had won the presidency. I think it's because Trump came in and was seen as credible in threatening the Israelis and the Palestinians that we're going to hurt you if you don't actually get this done, because I want to show a win. And Netanyahu was willing to do it, and frankly, Hamas was willing to do it too. That doesn't mean that we're closer to a two-state solution. I don't believe that. It doesn't mean we're closer to an end to the war overall.
Well, speaking of wars, Russia and Ukraine, and the role that you believe Donald Trump can perhaps play there.
Well, it's not going to be one day, as we learned. He said that a lot during his campaign, 24 hours, he can end the war. And sometimes he exaggerates. I think we've learned that over the past years. This is one of those cases. But he does want the war to be over, and the Ukrainians are saying we recognize that we're going to have to start negotiating. Some of that is because of Trump, and some of that is because they just don't have the people on the ground to keep fighting the way they have. And by the way, neither the Russians. The Russians have suffered 700,000 casualties in this war, which is just a breathtaking number. And the Russians also would like to have some time to regroup before they continue. So I think that there is a reasonable chance, more than 50-50, that this year we do see a ceasefire. But a ceasefire is not an end to the war. And a ceasefire doesn't suddenly bring NATO and Russia together. NATO will still be arming Ukraine. And I think it's a mistake to believe that Trump is going to sell out to Putin. This is 4 years of a Trump presidency, and he doesn't want Ukraine to be lost on his watch. So he is going to want to ensure that Ukraine can still defend itself in the territory that Russia doesn't occupy.
Let's talk about Canada, and of course Trump has threatened Canada as well, but Canada has got its own domestic issues to deal with, including an election. Mike Carney now in the race. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm not surprised, of course. He's very popular, central bank governor. He was asked by Trudeau to become Minister of Finance in Trudeau's own administration, but that was before Chrystia Freeland very publicly shot Trudeau in the face and said, I'm out, and she's Deputy Prime Minister. So that was the end of the administration. She's running as well, and she's popular among some on the ground. I think that Carney is the voice of the establishment. He's the person that, people that you are interviewing would certainly prefer to see. He was very capable in the UK when he was central bank governor. He was very capable in Canada in that role as well. But still, right now, the odds-on favorite would be the Conservatives to win, Pierre Poilievre, and they've got about a 25-point lead on the Liberals in the hustings. So he has a shot, and she has a shot, but I mean, it's very clear that it's going to be an uphill struggle.